everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar for a year in review for 2017. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host for today. We're going to take an overview on how to look at your program's performance from the past year and how to analyze some of those trends. We'll also take a look at some tips on how to optimize going into 2018. And we'll take a look at some publisher highlights and different things that took place over this past year as well. I'll open it up for questions at the end of the webinar, so if you can hang on to any questions that you have until the end. And just so everyone knows, I will be sending a copy of the deck to everyone that attended, and there'll also be a recorded version located in the Knowledge Center after the webinar is over as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for our agenda today, we're going to go over the performance review process, how to take a look at your program's performance from the past year, and some different trends and things to look for. We'll take a look at some optimization tips for next year, and then the 2017 publisher highlights that took place. So first, we'll go into performance review. So there's a few key questions that you're going to want to ask yourself in terms of your program's performance for the last year. You always want to have goals set for your program, so looking at what your program's goals were for 2017 or your key performance indicators. If you were using Pepperjam's KPI tracking, you can take a look at that as well, or if you had set up your own goals or metrics of success, take a look at that to see if you were able to achieve that, or maybe your program wasn't able to achieve that, and how that compares to the actual performance for the year. And did you make any adjustments for the year? So maybe you had some strategy shifts, maybe you had some unexpected budget or something like that that shifted your strategy during the year as well. It's always good to take note of. A good thing to always look at is your program's performance. So which campaigns and promotions performed best for the year. So if you ran anything specific with publishers, or maybe you had a certain friends and family event or something like that that was very successful during the year, all those types of things are great to take note of in your planning for the upcoming year. So going along with that as well, what are the key dates that performed for the brand? So when you're looking at certain types of promotions throughout the year, or did you have certain seasonality that was more successful than other seasons for the year as well? And which products were the best sellers for the year? And are there certain publishers associated with that that maybe help drive the sales of those products? And then take a look at who your top 10 or top 20 publishers are in the program, and how much has that shifted since the beginning of 2017. So you'll also want to look at your promotional calendar. So what were your strongest key dates or campaigns that you ran? And did you test anything with publishers? Maybe you ran a new placement with a publisher that you hadn't before. And then how successful was that? Is it something that you'd like to maybe reconsider in 2018 as well? So when you're evaluating your performance, as I mentioned before, you're always going to want to look at your key performance indicators, or what your goals were for the year. And you'll always look at your gross revenue and any reversals to get your ultimate revenue for the year with your affiliate and network commissions. If you ran any publisher placements, did you have fixed fees, and what was the return on investment for those? And what was your overall return on ad spend for the year? So they're all good things to take a look at in terms of your overall performance. So we did implement KPI tracking during 2017, which allows you to set up your goals for the program and then quickly see whether you're meeting or achieving those goals right within your dashboard. So if you have not already, I definitely recommend taking a look at KPI tracking and setting these up for the program. But maybe you hadn't used that. You can also just view what your metrics of success are for the program and compare the results at the end as well. So I have a few best practices for KPI tracking laid out here. So for KPIs, you're always going to want to understand the available KPIs and determine which ones you want to use and track for the program. So there's 9 available ones that you can use within Pepperjam. But you'll want to consider what you're looking at in terms of metrics of success. Maybe it's new customers for the brand, or maybe it's overall revenue, different things like that for what you're looking for and what you'd like to achieve going into next year. So I definitely recommend evaluating this on a weekly basis as well to see where you're at in terms of meeting your goal. Maybe you're already achieving it, or maybe you're not on track to meet your goal. And those types of things are great to adjust and review your strategy as you're reviewing your KPIs. And you will want to set this up by the last day of the month. So when you're setting up your January KPIs, be sure to get that set up by the 31st. And if you have any questions on which KPIs to use or maybe your strategy, definitely reach out to the advertiser support team or your account manager to discuss. Another great thing to do in terms of looking at the past year is evaluate your publisher performance. So first, take a look at publisher performance month over month. So pull metrics for clicks, your revenue, your average order value, conversion rate, and things like that for each month of the year. And then identify the number of active publishers each month to see whether maybe this went up or down, or maybe certain publishers became active in the program during a certain month. And identify your trends and seasonality within the program. Maybe you have a certain time of year that performs best for the program, or maybe you ran a specific sale that had revenue increasing for the program. So they're all great things to take note of as you're looking at your month-over-month performance. You'll also want to pull your creative reporting to identify what the top performing maybe banners or text links are for the program, because you might want to emulate those for future creatives next year, or maybe you want to include those if they're not a seasonal creative. You can tag those in your newsletters and share with publishers as well. So if you've had your program going for over a year, you'll always want to do a year-over-year performance review. So compare your data year over year, but also review that publisher performance to see if there's any segments of publishers that had some year-over-year increases or decreases. Maybe you had some certain publishers join the program this year that became active. And if you haven't already talked to those publishers, are there ways to increase your opportunities with them or optimize with them? And are there any publishers that have become inactive? So maybe you had some publishers that were in your top 5 or your top 10 that maybe dropped off a little bit throughout the year. And it's always good to take a look at how you can maybe re-engage with that publisher and start that communication to get back on their radar and see if they can become a top publisher for the program again. I always recommend segmenting your publishers as well. So I have some example segments over here. For your top publishers, you may want to separate things as mid and low tier publishers, or maybe you just want to have a mid-tier level. And then your inactive publishers, so publishers that aren't generating any clicks or sales for the program. So especially at this time of year, it's good to take a look at who all the publishers are in the program and get an idea of what their value is to the program as well. If you ran any placements throughout the year, it's always a good idea to keep a placement tracker to see how successful these were. So I have an example tracker listed here, and you might want to have something along these lines to see which placements that you ran, what the period was, and ultimately what the ROI was at the end of the placement. So it's a good idea to keep track of this to see what was successful and what you might like to keep on your radar for next year in terms of booking placements with publishers. It's a good idea as well to look at your publisher commission performance. So taking a look at all the different commission tiers that your publishers might be in, and did these commission levels help reach your expectations for publishers? Did you alter any of your commissions throughout the year? So maybe you gave some commission increases, or maybe you decided to lower commissions for publishers. And was there any effect on that? Did that publisher drop off after you maybe lowered their commission, or did they have a big increase after you gave them a commission increase as well? So taking a look at where your trends have been, and then also getting an idea of what you'd like to use as your commission structure for publishers going into 2018. It's a good idea as well to evaluate your financial performance. So I have an example over here, and you might want to look at this month over month, or if you can, look at it year over year. So run a performance report to pull out all your key info. So keep it in a well-organized format like this, and then analyze which dates perform best to help you identify your trends. So you might see a spike in your data for a certain time during November, for example, and maybe you know that that's because you ran a Black Friday or Cyber Monday event, but keeping an idea of what's going on with the program or why you might see certain spikes and decreases help get a better idea of what you might like to use for your promotional calendar for next year. And as we're taking a look at all of this, let's take a look at some ways to take some of this data and then optimize going into 2018 as well. So we mentioned setting up your KPIs. So one of the first things you'll want to do is get an idea of what your goals are going to be for the next year. So take a look at the past year and which KPIs did you track in 2017. And even if you weren't using the KPI tracking, what goals did you have for the year? Did you have specific revenue goals, or maybe you were trying to get a certain amount of new users for the brand, things like that. And then were you able to reach these goals? And then how can you adjust that going into the next year? So did you change any strategy throughout the year, or are you going to change any strategy for 2018? So all those things will take place as you're looking at your January KPIs. One of the first things you're going to want to start to do as we go into the new year as well is reviewing those publisher lists, as we mentioned before, to get an idea of who your top publishers are or where publishers might fall in the scope of your program, but start targeting new partnerships for 2018. So I just have an example of the Managed Publishers page here, but it's a good idea to go through some of your lists, or maybe you have some invited publishers that you're waiting on a response from, or publishers that you weren't sure about joining with before. So going through and reviewing all of that info to get some new publishers to recruit to the program, especially as you get started in the new year, is a good thing to do as well. And if you haven't had a chance to use Optimizer, we did roll out a new tool this year. Optimizer gives you the ability to search for publishers based on some specific metrics outside of what's normally in the Managed Publishers page. So you can look for publishers based on their network performance, their average monthly visits, their social media presence, even amongst different platforms. So it's a great way to look for new publishers to recruit to the program based on some more specifics in what you're looking for as well. So if you haven't yet used Optimizer, I definitely recommend getting set up with that going into the new year as well. And you'll see that listed on the upper left-hand corner next to your network tab, where you can find your login for that. And I just have a quick shot of the Optimizer recommendations page, which gives you some publishers and some additional info when you're looking at each publisher's name to get a better idea of who they are and what their benefit might be to the program. We also rolled out several new technology things available for you to use in Pepperjam this year, and I'm not going to go into too much detail for each one, but just to go over a few of them so that you have an idea of what you might like to use in 2018. We did add a new tool called Preferred Publisher, which gives you the ability to give a publisher preferred status so that if they show up anywhere in your clickstream, even if they're not the last click before the purchase was made, they'll be given credit for that order. So it's great if you're working with a lot of content publishers or maybe review sites, but also to leverage that in order to get some extra exposure with publishers, especially if you don't have a lot of budget to use, you might be able to give a publisher that preferred status as well as a commission increase for some extra exposure. We also added a tool for code suppression. So it's likely that you have a list of codes that are not meant for the affiliate channel. So now you can add these to your program by using the code suppression tool so that publishers, even if they use this code, they won't get credit for that order. So it's a good idea to always communicate which codes are available for publishers to use so that they're using the right codes when they're promoting the program. But this way you're not paying out twice for codes that weren't made for the affiliate channel. You also have the ability to give publishers vanity or exclusive codes. So maybe you wanted to leverage this similar to the preferred publisher tool, where you can give them maybe an exclusive code and commission increase in exchange for some extra placement on their site, especially if you don't have as much budget to work with publishers as well. And then also, mobile commerce is continuing to increase, and we see a lot of publishers working more within that space as well. So considering offering some commission increase for more mobile type traffic for publishers can be something that you want to take a look at in the next year. So publisher communication is definitely key to all of this. So it's a good idea at the end of the year to start to go over your publisher relationships and start reaching out to publishers to talk about what your plans are for 2018 or what some of your goals are for the next year as well. And then to discuss maybe what they have going on so you can discuss how to best optimize with them. So I have an example communication listed here. And there's some key things that you always want to include when you're reaching out to publishers. They'll likely have a lot of advertisers they're working with, so giving them a quick shot of what your average order value is or what your conversion rate is so that they have an idea of what the program is as well. So definitely start reaching out to your publishers or maybe even setting up some calls to start talking about your plans for the next year. And I have a few publisher engagement tips listed here. Our team does curate a list of publisher opportunities that are coming up, and this is located in the notifications section on your dashboard. And it's updated often, so be sure to check back here for any new opportunities that might be available, or just reach out to the advertiser support team or your account manager if you're looking for something more specific. 2018 media kits are already starting to come in as well, so definitely be sure to check this often for some new up-to-date opportunities. We also have an offer newsletter that's sent out to all publishers in the beginning and middle of each month. So it's a great place to have any promotions that you have coming up included, as it will be seen by all the publishers in the network. So if you do have any promotions coming up, you'll find this located in the notification section as well. And you can fill out a quick form with the details for each promotion so that this can get sent out to publishers. So I'm going to go over some tips as well for running an activation campaign. I usually recommend running an activation campaign in the beginning of a quarter, so especially going into the new year, it's a great time to run one. And some of the benefits of running an activation campaign are to ramp your program up and engage more with your publishers and broaden the number of publishers who are active in the program. Optimizing your existing publisher relationships, and then activating some of those new publishers to the program that maybe aren't yet performing. So you may want to categorize them as new publishers, active publishers, and inactive publishers. But you can really make this however you want to when you're sending this out for the program as well. So I'm going to go over a few examples of how to run an activation campaign. But you can always adjust this based on how you'd like to do your own. So we're going to separate publishers into tiers. So the first tier is for revenue generating publishers. And for these publishers, you might want to optimize by giving them a bonus if they reach a certain revenue threshold for the month or month over month. So maybe give them a flat bonus, or maybe you're going to give them a commission increase for the next month as well. So it gives them some extra motivation to generate some sales for the program. Your Tier 2 publishers will be traffic-generating publishers, so they're driving some clicks for the program, but they're not yet driving sales. So you might want to offer them a percentage commission increase in exchange for some feature placements or extra exposure. So the goal for them is to have them become revenue active and move into that first tier. For Tier 3, you'll have your non-active publishers, so they're not generating clicks or revenue for the program yet. And you can reach out to all those publishers. Maybe you wanted to offer them a commission increase for a certain period of time, and then once they're able to become active. So for all of these, you might want to consider different options as well, or adjust this based on how you'd like to work within your strategy for publishers. And then after you run your campaign, you can take a look at the results and ask yourself some questions. So for your Tier 1 revenue generating publishers, how much revenue did they generate during the campaign? And how can you continue to optimize with them? Did you start to open up a line of communication with them as you started working with them for the campaign as well? And did they do anything differently to start driving these sales? Maybe they weren't previously promoting the program as much, or maybe they used a new creative. Things like that are always great to take note of. And how much uplift did you see from this tier? And for Tier 2 traffic-generating publishers, how many placements or extra exposure did you get in exchange for your commission increase? How many of these click-driving publishers became revenue active? And did you get them to add your brand to their marketing campaigns? And do they have any upcoming placements available? So especially for those publishers maybe that are generating clicks, you may not have worked with them in terms of what they have coming up in terms of extra exposure and things like that as well. So after this campaign, it's always good to see the types of opportunity that they have, especially if they became revenue active. For your Tier 3 non-active publishers, how many of them became click active, or did they even become revenue active? Did you offer them anything specific in order to generate these sales, and were you able to generate some new publishers from this as well? For activation campaigns, but even just in general for the program, it's always a good idea to have publisher groups set up. And it's a good time of year, especially as you're going into the new year, to review your groups and make sure everything's correct. Or if you haven't created any groups yet, to maybe consider creating some groups for either your top 5 or your top 10 publishers, and then maybe separating publishers based on some different categories like loyalty or blog sites as well. All right, and then lastly, I wanted to take a look at some publisher highlights and things that took place in 2017. So in 2017, we saw an emergence in publishers who adjusted their promotional methods to adapt to some of the industry changes that have been taking place. So Retail Me Not added a cashback offer to their software extension, which combines promotional codes with those cashback offers to give their consumers the best savings. Groupon also added a loyalty component called Bucks Back and introduced their deal page opportunity, which bridges that gap between their 2 million coupon audience and their 60 million marketplace audience. DealMoon also launched the Content Network this year, which allows advertisers to work directly with their influencers and promote and review your products. RewardStyle also updated their Like to Know It app, and this gives consumers the ability to take screenshots of products that they want to shop. And if the image is matched with one of their influencer-submitted images, it's sent to them as a push notification so that they can shop the content in the photo. And year-to-date, RewardStyle has seen more than 10 million screenshots matched. Publishers are also combining forces through acquisitions. So some key acquisitions that took place during the year. In Q1, Ebates acquired loyalty publisher Cartera and fashion discovery search platform ShopStyle. So these properties have operated independently since this began, but we are beginning to see a little bit of the technology being utilized, especially in terms of Ebates in-store cashback for Cartera properties. And in Q3, Protege, which owns loyalty publishers Swagbucks and MyPoints, announced the acquisition of loyalty publisher Shop at Home. And Shop at Home has also continued to operate independently, but the combined optimization and placement opportunities for all the Protege properties will be available in 2018. So definitely be on the lookout for that and some of the new opportunities that they'll have coming up. And a few publishers that saw some pretty significant growth throughout the year in 2017. My registry has 1 million plus unique visits per day and over 200,000 email subscribers. Wirecutter, who is a content publisher that specializes in long-form product reviews, and they have a site that focuses on electronics and outdoors, while their Sweet Home address focuses on home goods. And they also saw some pretty significant growth in 2017. And then another publisher that saw really excellent growth this past year was Wikibuy. And they're a fast-growing comparison shopping platform with over 700,000 users as well. So if you're not familiar with these publishers, or maybe you're not working with them, keep an eye on them for 2018, as they seem to be quickly growing. So a few takeaways and next steps that you can take a look at as you're going into the new year. Evaluating your performance, so taking a look at what your program's goals and KPIs were for 2017 and calculating your end results. And then taking a look at what the different trends that you observed in terms of promotions or maybe top publishers and things like that as well. And taking a look at whether you ran any specific campaigns with publishers and what those results were, so you can better align your promotional calendar for the upcoming year. So we'll also take a look at 2018 planning and goals. So after reviewing your performance, you're going to want to look at your 2018 goals and get these set up, especially getting your promotional calendar set up, taking a look at what your next year's budget's going to be, and the different commission structures that you may be lining up your publishers with as well. So you also might want to consider running an activation campaign in Q1 to help activate and get off to a strong start with your publishers. So definitely revisit your top performing publishers and send them emails, or maybe even set up some calls to discuss what your plans are for 2018 and some best ways to optimize going into the new year. So we did roll out a number of new technology options available here at Pepperjam. And I'm not going to go into too much detail with each of these, but just to highlight a few. Dynamic commissioning has been available for a while, but if you're not using dynamic commissioning, it's a great time to go ahead and get updated. So if you aren't using dynamic commissioning, definitely reach out to your account manager or our advertiser support team. And we'll talk about the next steps to update that as well. But even if you are using dynamic commissioning, are there some different rules and conditions or options that you haven't taken advantage of? And maybe consider looking at that for your commission structures going into the new year. So also Optimizer was rolled out this year, so it gives you additional ways to search for publishers based on some things like average monthly visits, their social media presence, and things like that. So especially when you're looking for new publishers to recruit to the program, go ahead and use the Optimizer tool. There's a number of new attribution features that were rolled out this year as well, including in-cart attribution, preferred publisher, exclusive code, and code suppression. So if you have any questions on using any of those or how those will work for your program, definitely reach out. We'd be happy to help. And just so everyone knows, for our January webinar, we'll be doing a New Year, New Program review. So we'll go into a lot more depth with how to review the program and recruiting publishers and things like that as well. So be on the lookout for a calendar date for that. And I guess that ends the webinar. So I'll just open it up for any questions. So if anyone wants to ask a question, feel free to send that over. And I'll follow up as soon as I can. Thanks. All right, so I have a question about how to locate the attribution features or the code suppression tool on your dashboard. So you can locate this by going to your settings tab. Keep in mind that you do need to have dynamic tracking in order to use many of the attribution tools. So if you're not using dynamic, you may not see this added. But if you are using dynamic tracking, that should be under your settings tab, and you'll see attribution features. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for attending today's webinar. I will be sending a copy of the deck for everyone to view as well, and then a recorded version of this will be located in the Knowledge Center. So if you'd like to take another look at your own convenience as well, that'll be located there. So definitely be on the lookout for the next webinar invite, and then reach out to our support team if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.